Okay, today you have a realistic fiction book. I know it's nice to have fiction after having a couple of nonfiction books, informational books. So this fiction book is also a graphic text. Um, so think about what you might know about reading a graphic text. Okay, it's a little bit different. In a graphic text, follow the panels as you do with a regular text, from left to right, and then from the top of the page to the bottom. Print in the speech bubbles shows dialogue, so what people are talking, what they're saying. Print in the thought bubbles shows what characters are thinking. Sometimes the pictures include words that describe sounds. So as you read, notice details in the pictures and infer what happens between the pictures. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot for you to see. Okay, so that might be more interesting to you, or maybe you can lose, information. So you have to really make sure you're looking at everything on the page. This book is about a sailing trip. Ellie and her dad are going out for a day of sailing. But there is just one problem, and it's a serious one. Okay, so I'm going to have you read the information on the back cover of the book. Let's get to the back. Okay, and I'll help you because I know it's small on this view. It says, "Let's go fishing. Beautiful day, beautiful sailboat. Everything's just perfect, except for someone who gets horribly seasick." That can really ruin it. Have you ever been seasick? I have once, and it is not fun. Okay. Okay, now let's go back to the front cover. Okay. The title is Seasick, and it's by Stephen Krensky. What kind of mood or feeling does the front cover communicate to you? Like, what does it make you think of? Compare the illustration on the front cover with the one on the title page. So here's the front cover, and then here's the title page. Which ones do you think comes first? Think about that. Okay, so if we look here at page 2 and 3, there's Ellie standing on the pier. Okay, this is the pier. It's like the part where you walk out to get on the boat. You see the narrative. That's the part telling the story. So you see the narrative telling what's going on in the story. And you see Ellie with a speech bubble. Okay, so here's a speech bubble. So this is just the narrative. That's information telling the story. And then you see the speech bubble with what she's actually saying. Okay, if you read page 2, it says this is going, okay, I'll go ahead and read it out loud because I don't know if you can see it. "I stood on the pier and looked at the trim yellow sailboat tied up there. It looked so innocent, bobbing lightly on the water, up, down, tilt, up, down, tilt. This is going to be bad, very, very bad." So who do you think is telling the story? Right? It's definitely her, okay? It's definitely Ellie. She's telling the story using the word I, and she's narrating as if she's looking back on the experience. So she uses the past tense. For example, you can find the word looked on page 2, okay? Here, "I stood on the pier and looked at the trim yellow sailboat." So she's looking back at that experience and telling you about it. When she talks, she uses the present tense. So here she said, "This is going to be bad, very, very bad." So when she's talking, it's present tense. But when she's telling the story, she's telling the story in the past tense. So don't let that confuse you. You might have to think about that as you're reading to keep up. Look at page 3 over here and notice the narrative boxes in the 3 panels on the right. 1, 2, 3. Okay. In this part of the story, Ellie, as the narrator, remember narrator means she's telling the story, is telling what her dad is like. She's using present tense because that's what he is always like. So let's read those panels to find out some important traits of this character. She says, "My dad believes in thinking positively. My dad swears that if you just have the right attitude, you can do anything at all. My dad doesn't get seasick." So there are some sailing terms in this book. Okay, so let's go to page 12. Okay, you may or may not know some of these terms. Okay, so there's a, let's see, what does it say? Anchor. Okay, so you pulled up the anchor. So this is called an anchor. Okay, that's the part that helps you stay still, right? So pulled up the anchor. That helps you stay still when you're in a boat, like if you don't want to move further, right? It drops down and holds the boat still. I'm looking for another word. Okay, let's go on to page 14. Okay, now let's look for this word. Oh, here's, let's look for the word overboard. See where it says, and knocked him overboard. Okay, and it means just what it looks like. When you go overboard, it means you fall off. You fall off the boat. Okay. Also on page 16, there's the word life preserver. And you may know some of these words, but this here at the bottom, this circle that looks kind of like a donut, and think about that, life preserver, preserves your life. So it's kind of like you may play with one of these at the pool that's not really, sometimes it even says on it not to be used as a life preserver. It's just like a float, but these are actually meant to save someone's life if they're out in the ocean or they're drowning. Okay, so a life preserver. And then another word is outboard motor. Let's see where this is. Page 20. We're going to go down to page 20. Okay, so outboard motor. Okay, right here, this very first picture, the first line says outboard motor. And that's basically the motor. This, if you look at the second picture, you can see this motor next to her. This motor that makes the boat go, that's called an outboard motor. It's on the back of the boat. So that's called an outboard motor. Okay. What else? On page 20, it looks like Ellie has a pretty serious problem. Okay, much worse than seasickness. So I guess seasickness was her main problem going through. As you read, think about the relationship between Ellie and her dad and notice whether it changes. Okay, so this looks like a pretty exciting book as you see what's happening going through. So keep in mind some of those new words and see what happens. Start back at the beginning. I'll attach the book. And if you're in class, you can have the actual book to read through. Enjoy.